Hey, welcome back to Fifi and Fidos. Today's the second segment in our kind of series of senior dog. Today we want to talk a little bit about food and why it's so important, for your senior dog to make sure that we're feeding the dog correctly. To do that, I want to kind of go back a little bit in my education as far as dealing with the senior dog and why I'm in the business basically is why food is so important to our pets overall, dogs, cats, everybody. We work on the principle here that medicine is sick care. Food is health care. So feeding correctly can have a huge impact on the overall health of the animal in front of you. And that's why you'll hear us when you come in to visit us, you'll hear us talking about using probiotics and things like that. Many years ago when I was a kid, when we had dogs, we didn't have all the kibble as much as we do now. There's kibble everywhere now. Kibble it's huge. There's dry food everywhere. We had a little dry food, but most of it was canned food. So when I was growing up, all of our animals, dogs and cats, got mostly a little bit of dry and a lot of canned, a lot of table scraps. If we had broccoli for dinner, my mom would cut up little bits and pieces of that, put it in the bowl for the dog, and so that's how we kind of grew up. We never did the dry food. And then, of course, as the years went by, the prevalence of dry food became a thing. I think is a convenience factor for pet owners, but it's not necessarily the best food you can feed your dog. So we're going to fast forward and talk about Chica now, because Chica's 15. She's a super senior, especially for her breed. She's like half pit, half staffy, and that's pretty old for that breed. When I first got her, it had been a few years, since I had a dog, and I wasn't sure what was out there. So when I found her, or she found me, whichever, the first thing I did is I went and ran up to PetSmart to look, because I knew I had to have food for her, and I ran up to PetSmart and walked in, and it was just like, holy smokes. There was, aisle after aisle from floor to ceiling, all these different foods, and I just looked at that and I said, wait, what? And so I started, going around and flipping bags over, and I've been interested in human food for a while, and the concerns with human foods as far as, how we grow our food, how we process our food, the amount of sugars in our food that we don't even realize are there. And I kind of knew that the dog food was going to be as bad, if not worse, and I was absolutely right. So I must have spent 2 hours there at PetSmart turning over the bags and looking at the ingredients in the food. And I was astonished. There was ingredients in there that I would not feed Chica. I just wasn't going to do that. I was fortunate. I found food that at that time was, cutting edge. It was Evo, which was primarily meat, very few, other substances in it. It was a meat-based diet, more appropriate for our facilitative carnivores, which is what our dogs are. And so I started with that, and then when I got into the store, I started doing even more research on the diets, and I realized that I wanted her to have, as close to a natural diet that a dog could have. So from the time she was on a dry food for probably about the first maybe year, but even then, I always had to add fresh in. I was always adding in, fresh meat or, again, vegetables that I'd cooked, bone broth, things like that. So she never actually had a dry food. As we progressed, when I got into the store, I started looking at other types of foods. There's freeze-dried, dehydrated, and things like that. So I brought in some food. Some of you may know the name of the Honest Kitchen. I brought that in because that was pretty much an organic, human-grade food. And that's what Chica lived on for probably 2 years after we got into the store. And then after that, I again started doing my research, started reading and following some of the, the holistic vets, some of the natural raisers of animals. And it became clear to me that for my dog, what I wanted is I wanted her to be on what we call, the natural prey diet. And I wanted it to be what she would eat were she a wild dog. And I always tell people, we don't have wild dogs. We have, our domestic animals that we have in our house. But they still are, again, facilitative or scavenging carnivores. They need a meat-based diet. And so I started looking into, first the dehydrated, then the freeze-dried. And then I got my first freezer so that I could feed Chica, frankly, and I could have, sell it to my customers as well, with the raw diet. And the raw diet is what I call a species-appropriate diet. It's meant for a carnivore. It is meat, it is bone, it is organs. And, it comes frozen and we thaw it out. Now I have 14, 15, I don't know. I have lots of freezers in here. And so we have multiple different diets from multiple different raw food manufacturers. And when people hear raw food, they think, oh my gosh, no, that's horrible. I couldn't feed my dog raw. Or, my vet says, raw is bad, it's horrible, it's going to kill you. What a lot of people don't understand within the pet food industry is your raw food manufacturers, they're held to a higher standard than are the kill food manufacturers, the dry food manufacturers. There is a zero tolerance by the FDA on raw food diets for any pathogenic bacteria. Zero tolerance. Now, for the human food, from the USDA monitoring the human food, they have absolutely not the same thing at all. There is absolutely no regulations on the amount of Salmonella, E. coli, or anything that can be on the chicken that you buy at H-E-B or Sam's or whatever, because they assume that it's going to be cooked. And the cooking should kill those bacteria. If you were to go to any store right now and take a swab of anything in those cases, you would find them pretty bacteria heavy. If you were to do the same thing from the food in this store, you would find they're like zero tolerance. Again, very light bacteria. But so that's how I started, getting into the food portion of this and how I started working with Chica. Because I wanted her to have the best that I could do. And so again, we do the raw diet. More recently, we started adding in, the big theme with me you'll hear throughout the store if you come into our store is we believe in whole food. And whole food is real food, basically. Not kibble, dried, whatever. And when it comes to supplementation, we feel the same way as well. We don't use supplements that have binders, fillers, excipients, and a lot of other ingredients in them if we have a food source that does the same thing that's more natural. So that's our take on a lot of that. But we started really doing a lot of research. We started hearing a lot of things coming up about, gut health, for us as well. I mean, how many of you drink kombucha? How many of you eat fermented foods? You know that the probiotic bacteria in the gut is critical for overall health. I've heard different estimates. I like the 80%, maybe it's 70, maybe it's 85, I don't know, but 80% of the immune system is in the gut. The gut's its own thing. I mean, it's, the immune system, in that gut, it's its own, microbiome inside. And that's what helps to keep us healthy. That's what helps to keep us, to be able to have the immunity to some of the diseases that go around. The healthier you are, the less likely you are to have problems down the road. And so we started bringing in, like we have a raw fermented goat's milk and raw fermented cow's milk kefir that we use for probiotics. But we also have other types of probiotics. Pretty much everybody that comes in here is on probiotics. And it's the same thing with Chica. Chica started in on probiotics very young in her life. And she started on the raw diet fairly young in her life. When I started noticing her slow down when she was about 7 years old, she wasn't as peppy. And I started thinking that I needed to add something into this diet. So what we're doing now is I started adding in, again, whole food supplement, green-lipped muscle powder. That's where a lot of the glucosamine supplements come from. But why do I want something that has all these ingredients when I can give her just green-lipped muscle? So whole food supplementation became part of the diet. And so now, and eventually I'll show you my list of what I give to my dogs and give to Chica. But the supplementation can be as important as the diet itself. Because what I wanted to do is to knock back the inflammation in her body. 3 years ago, I think it was, I took her in for a full body x-ray at the vet's office. When I picked her up, other than the osteoarthritis in her paws, which who knows where that came from, the vet was totally astonished that there was as little inflammation in her body as there was. He did not see any of the typical age-related, inflammatory issues with the hips or the spine or the knees, And I attribute a lot of that to a low inflammatory diet, low in carbohydrates, low in sugar, supplementation correctly. We will get into an entire session on the different types of supplements, but if you're just feeding your dog a bag of food or, a cans of food or even a raw diet, that may be fine, but it never hurts to start adding in some of these other anti-inflammatory substances like the ringlet muscle powder. With Chica, I've added in mushroom powder. We have a 7 mushroom blend, which is good. It helps to build the immune system as well. Helps to fight against some of those bad guys that are out there. We had a scare, a couple of weeks ago when Chica had surgery. We didn't know if those, lumps and bumps that we had removed was going to be cancerous or not. They were not cancerous. And that makes me feel very good. At 15, she still doesn't have anything that we can see coming down the road that's going to cause her to be ill. But food plays an important part. Food is one of the reasons that she is as old as she is, and as healthy as she is, and as active as she is. So when you look at your dog's diet, take a look at what you're feeding, take a look at how you're feeding. If you're feeding a dry food, supplement that food with, fresh food. If you're making broccoli for dinner, give your pup a little bit of broccoli. Give them, fresh vegetables. Give them fresh meat. If you cook a chicken, take a little bit off and put some fresh food in that bowl, because fresh food just helps. It just adds so much to your dog's diet, and it can help them. It helps it helps their gut become healthier, and it just helps the whole dog to do, feel better. Our next little bit of thing that we're going to do is probably going to be on some of the supplementation that we do for the dogs, and cats as well. But right now, like I said, I just wanted to show you how I got to where I am as far as feeding my dog at 15, and encourage you to take a look at what you're feeding your dog and talk to us. Call us if you have any questions on how we can help you improve your dog's diet. And that's it. Until next time, we'll see you later.